Psychologists, what do people think is normal but isn't? Story 1. Sorry for the messy mobile post. Forgive me, online gods. Too long didn't read? Extreme emotions, lack or struggle with impulse control, blackouts, extreme irritability, disrupted sleep, muted or bottled emotions, feeling like an alien, feeling like everyone has an ulterior motive, self-isolation, preoccupation with pleasing others or avoiding conflict, feeling of emptiness, feeling like part of your identity is missing, or you don't have an identity of your own, subtle tendencies to latch on to others, especially romantic partners or crushes. Maybe sometimes you feel like you're just a tad too much, or maybe you've heard that from some exes. Went to school for forensic psych before I had to drop out due to my own unchecked mental illness. Turns out my worldview has been wrong my whole life, and I thought everyone was like this because my family members were like this. Even though I was in and out of therapy my whole life for depression and anxiety, nobody spotted the BPD because I didn't know these feelings needed to be talked about. Never caught the borderline until my head became such a dangerous place. I wasn't sure I'd ever function again or be able to have the relationships I craved with my loved ones. Another example is my significant other. He's always had muted emotions. Not a lot of expressed passion about the things he likes or believes are important. Not even enough to vote before we got together. Most people with SPD will feel this detachment and think it's fine, but they can be really struggling and not know why, or even not know that there's a problem, like heart disease. I won't lie that in some cases, having schizoid is almost encouraged, work of nearly every kind. However, it very seriously impacts the quality of life for the person, sometimes making them feel like they have no place in this world. Hint: everyone needs a therapist. Original person, thank you. What a great post. You've got a lot of people talking, which further normalizes talking about and acting on mental well-being. That was a big laundry list to have to go through at the beginning of this story. I think we've all had some of those sort of behaviors from time to time, but seeing as all of those can become much more compounded the more of them that you have, I think that we all need someone, if not a therapist, someone that we trust very, very much to let us know if our behavior or outlook isn't quite what would be considered normal. I hope anyone can find that kind of person or that kind of therapist. Story 2. Not a therapist or a mental health professional, but a patient who has had major depression and heaps of anxiety for a very long time. Safe to say, a majority of my life. For depression, exhaustion with no cause, feeling numb, random bursts of anger, losing interest in favorite things, mental dullness, drops in grade/work ethic, wanting to vanish, believing others would be better off without you, feeling like a burden, getting sick more often, isolating yourself. Casual, self-unaliving thoughts. My own big example of this and own experience was walking down a road with my sister and thinking casually, I could just sidestep in front of a car and be terminated, just popped into my head. Feeling worthless, intrusive thoughts, staring off into space for hours and hours, random crying spells, feeling like you deserve to be unhappy. For anxiety, feeling suffocated in a crowded place, stammering, getting frustrated over something simple, going mute, dry mouth, being hyper-aware of everyone, feeling like everyone is watching you, feeling like you're being watched, feeling like you're being judged constantly, feeling like people are out to get you, feeling like certain things are traps, like you were set up for failure, feeling sick before you're supposed to do something, uncontrollable shaking, insomnia, an uncontrollable sense of dread, imagining the worst possible case scenario, being afraid to leave your home. Some of these overlap, of course, and all of these are my own personal experiences and symptoms. They vary from person to person. Please do not be ashamed to get help. These people want to help you. If you can't afford help, please try and find a free clinic. You deserve to be happy. You deserve not to feel like total junk. Even if you did go to a mental hospital, these people really care. They want to make you better. Mental illness is just that, an illness. Don't deny yourself the help you need and deserve. You wouldn't brush off a potentially serious physical illness, so don't brush off a potentially serious mental illness. I think a lot of us tend to view the old school trope of TV and movies of the sinister mental hospital, a dreary place, and the doctors that for some reason just want to keep you under their control for some reason. That gets a lot of attention, even in recent movies. I think it's only recently that psychology has been viewed as something that you go to for help, for some kind of wisdom or some kind of way to deal with it. Story 3. A good rule of thumb as to whether a behavior or symptom should be checked out is the same we use to determine a diagnosable disorder, if it causes impairment in one or more areas of your life. The range of what is normal is huge, but if something keeps you from going to school or work, keeps you from maintaining basic hygiene, from maintaining your friendships, familiar relationships, romantic relationships, it's causing impairment, and you should seek help. Edits. Wanted to clarify a few things. 1. This is not an exhaustive criteria for diagnosable mental illness. There are many criteria we consider in diagnosing, but the one criteria that is present for all is that it must cause impairment. 2. Enjoyment is also an important aspect of functioning. If you're getting by in your life but are miserable, get help. You don't have to live like that. 3. Serial killers and psychopaths represent a very small percentage of the population and rarely seek help willingly. This was not directed at them. 4. The area of functioning I listed are general examples pulled from the Western culture where I live and was trained. Different cultures have different values, and the norms of your culture should be taken into account. 5. If you're unbothered by your level of functioning in these areas relative to cultural expectations, good for you. Most people considering this advice likely have a sense that something is not where they want it to be in their life and are looking for confirmation that it's bad enough to seek help. If you're not concerned, my advice is not directed at you. 6. No one is saying that being content with having no interpersonal connections is inherently pathological. Also, thanks for the awards and all the responses. I really enjoyed reading and responding. I think that's very important. It didn't really click in my mind that impairment is something that would be inherent through mental illness like it would for a physical illness. It seems obvious now, if you've got an injury that, if you injure your hand that prevents you from working or operating a computer, you would seek help for that. Yes, same thing with a mental illness, I guess. I had never thought of that before. Story 4. The need for some patients to speak with their children about adult problems. No, your young child does not need to be aware that you're struggling financially or that Daddy slept with the lady next door. The parents that tell their children that they're going to go and speed my car into a tree purposely, unalive myself while you're at school, or slit my wrist when I shower tonight, and parents that feel they need their children fixed, as it's the child and not the family unit as the whole that needs support and/or assistance. Just a few recent ones I've heard. Edit. Sorry about format, commenting via mobile phone. Edit. Thanks for the gold. My first one. Edit. In regards to financial comments, taken from a previous comment of mine as I've been getting asked to answer this, I'm talking more on the extreme side, and towards children that have been extremely hurt, and money talk was used as a tool to make the child feel at fault and guilt to some degree. I'm currently working with a child now that is triggered whenever he hears talk about finances and feels it's his fault they will eventually become homeless. They won't, but this is what he's told. If only he didn't eat so much, if only he didn't have so many school fees. Not to mention the arguing between cares over finances. This must be his fault too, though. They're yelling and shouting because of this. The parents that tell their children that they're going to go and speed my car into a tree purposely, unalive myself while you're at school. My own mother took this one step further and threatened to drive both herself and I into a telephone pole if my grades didn't pick up. Story 5. There have been a lot of my patients who have been pretty surprised when I've told them, hey, that's anxiety or depression, when they just thought their behaviors were typical for everyone. Not being able to maintain friendships, constantly being nervous about the safety of your child to the point where you hate being alone with your child without your partner, not being able to motivate yourself to do things, especially things you once enjoyed, feeling excessively tired all the time, not being able to calm down and just think about the same thoughts over and over and feeling worried. Other things we can help you with. Having a hard time trusting others, trying to recover a relationship from infidelity, not knowing why your kid is misbehaving so much and needing guidance, helping to improve communication within your relationships. If you experience these things and more, therapists can help. Let us help you. Edited to add. I've noticed the cost coming up in a lot of these replies. I hate that cost is such a barrier for people. Sometimes colleges offer free or discounted therapy from their students. When you're training to be a therapist, you spend at least 1 year working as a therapist while meeting with a supervisor each week to consult on your cases and get guidance on moving forward. My college unfortunately didn't offer discounted sessions, but I know many do. It might be worth checking out. Some systems also have charity care options for people with low incomes. That can be worth pursuing as well. To find a therapist, if you're in the U.S., you can call your insurance company and get a list of places that take your insurance. That's a good place to start. Story 6. Psychotherapist here. Some things I see regularly that could have been caught earlier before they became a problem: unhealthy coping mechanisms. For example, drinking to relax frequently or smoking a lot. Even something like promiscuity can be a red flag that a person is trying to avoid dealing with something stressful by distracting themselves. Self-harm, hitting yourself, banging your head on things, burning yourself on purpose, cutting yourself, etc. All of those things indicate that it's time to talk with a professional. Normal child/teen behaviors that are not actually normal, like running away or getting into fights. Not communicating. When this happens, something is usually wrong. Not always, as some folks are quieter than others. But if a child, teen, or adult rarely speaks, or if they're silent in the presence of their parents or significant other, it's time to get them to see a professional alone to have their safety assessed. I've seen individuals who are literally shut down due to having been profoundly abused by the people they live with, and one of the main signs of that is silence. I've also seen people in perfectly good homes who cannot communicate due to extreme anxiety, and without professional help, it's hard for them to overcome this. Mood swings. When a person's mood changes from one extreme to another fairly often or regularly, that's another concerning symptom. Sometimes they're considered eccentric or hormonal, but that sort of thing can be a sign of many problems, from bipolar disorder to post-traumatic stress disorder. My parents always made me follow a sort of social code. To a point, I just didn't say anything anymore near them in fear of offending them. The part about not communicating was interesting to me, and also the fact that it's not just abusive homes, but it can even be a good home, and you have anxiety for some reason that you're trying to figure out. I think it just comes, I say this a lot, but it all boils down to communication. And not communicating is a very big sign that there is just something wrong. Your thoughts are just not connecting to your mouth, and you're not able to express yourself for some reason. And it's not always because you're being abused. Story 7. I am a very specific psychologist. I'm a research psychologist, and my area is maternal infant health. So I'm not sure how helpful this is, but we truly do not have a great understanding about what a physiologically normal postpartum mental health experience is versus a pathological one, except on the extreme end. So if you're having thoughts of harming yourself or others, including your baby, that is a pathological postpartum experience. I've met with women who, when told they had PPD because they were looking forward to going back to work, or were suggested to take medication because they reported feeling overwhelmed. I've also had women who were told it was normal to feel unmotivated, detached from the world, or isolated for months after giving birth because that was just adjusting to motherhood. Perceptions of normal/not normal postpartum well-being vary wildly, and this makes promoting postpartum well-being really difficult. So my advice is this. Some of the distress probably is normal. It's a huge life change, a huge physical toll, and a huge shift in hormones. But if that distress is distressing to you, there are likely many, many different strategies for helping alleviate it, including medication when indicated. I would also say that postpartum anxiety is something that I actually tend to see are more commonly normalized/not diagnosed. Chronic, persistent, debilitating worry about your infant is not normal. But frankly, we've socialized it being an indicator of good mothering, even if it decreases overall quality of life. Story 8. Perfectionism. While everyone wants to do good work, an obsession with perfection is not something to be proud of, and definitely not healthy. Healthy work ethic is doing your best and then letting go, as in recognizing no matter how much effort you put in, the result is to some extent out of your control, and that's okay. The intent and effort counts more than the end result. If you get obsessed with the end result, only you will hurt yourself because you never have full control over your end result. But you do have full control over the intensity and dedication you'll put in, even if that doesn't translate well. It's a fact of life sometimes things don't work out. So people who never, and I mean never, have anything less than flawless work all the time are paying for it somehow. Burnout or mental stress or overtime or medication/drugs to keep going or etc. It is pathological to want or think you can realistically have such control that your work is flawless all the time. Story 9. Trauma reactions. They are very normal for the situation, but are not healthy or easy to deal with without help. Our bodies and brains hoard survival responses, so I see a lot of people struggling with unhealthy coping mechanisms or habits that at one point kept them safe and helped them survive. This can range from large mood swings, emotional or physical disassociation, difficulty connecting with one's physical or emotional well-being, and difficulty identifying triggers. I get a lot of childhood abuse survivors who have had issues in therapy before due to this. If your therapist goes in assuming you're able to connect with and name feelings, identify what's weighing on you, etc., they won't be very helpful. Also, my normal therapy PSA is, whenever possible, please don't wait. There is no such thing as an issue too small for therapy, but waiting can cause something to morph into a way bigger issue. I know for a variety of reasons that isn't always feasible, but if you can, please do. Again, some people might look to cost as a hindrance to seeking any kind of help on anything, but I think people have been trying to reach out on that. I think I've seen, and you've probably seen, TV shows, sometimes even movies or even games that have special numbers that can be called if you just want to talk to someone. I think there's just a bit of a start. If you have something that you think might be a problem and that you've been wondering about, maybe it wouldn't hurt to call one of those lines and try and seek some help. Story 10. Hi, I'm a kid who fell through the cracks. Got diagnosed with dyscalculia when I was a sophomore in high school. Throughout the years, my parents would tell counselors, psychologists, etc., that something wasn't right, and it was more than me being bad at math. It took a really bad one teacher I had pushing and advocating for me to get an official diagnosis before anyone did anything. I understand fully that sometimes parents can be a pain in the butt, but please, if a kid is 15 or 16 years old and is stuck at a 5th grade math level, look into it. Wow, I've never heard of this, but it really makes so much sense for me. I've always said I feel like I have a math-specific learning disability. People laugh when I say that. Now I know it's a real thing. Thanks for posting this. Story 11. For me, though it took me getting arrested for having one of my, at the time, many schizophrenic episodes in a safe way to actually admit I have a problem, and that was the day I got diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. Now I have a medicine that actually works without too bad of a side effect. Aripiprazole. I just have to get up really slow after I've been sitting down for more than 10 minutes. Otherwise, I pass out when I have a relapse, which is rare. I find it very hard to take it again, as the whispers tell me not to, until I'm forced to take it. And I mean with aggressive physical force. But it is a very scary thing to not be able to trust your own mind. Try the injectable Abilify so you don't have to take a pill every day. Story 12. New nurse here. Did my rotation for mental health, and one patient in particular took quite an interest in me. He was very polite and kind. He was chatting up a storm, answered everyone's questions, and repeatedly asked my name. Later, we got to look at a patient's files, and I got his. He had a psychotic break and started hearing God. She told him her name was Courtney, and that she had chosen him, and he was to find her and marry her. Guess what my first name is? Courtney. They ended up moving me to another part of the hospital after that because he was quite interested. Can confirm I am definitely not God. Way too much responsibility. What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us. I grew up in a religious household. There was a lot of names for God that we ran across. Courtney was not one of them. That's a new one. I'm having a little trouble trying to picture a Courtney God. For me, I'm thinking a lot of pink and always holding a vanilla latte, something like that. Story 13. It's a lot of things, really. Even the most insane things can be normalized. In the extremes, I know a patient whose father would occasionally beat her up, sometimes while she was showering, because she hadn't done a house chore, and she considered that normal. Reminds me of a friend who was beaten by her father. He would hit her a lot, and when we had a conversation about it, she was stunned that our parents never beat us. Her mother had told her it was normal. It was really sad, and her parents were complaining she would stay a lot at her friend's house, but I mean, it's really normal that she'll stay far away from them. Story 14. I've seen a lot of people dismiss their depression/other mental illness because it's not that bad, or other people have it worse, or I can or should be able to handle it on my own. You shouldn't have to suffer through mental illness, even if you technically can. You deserve to be happy, and therapists and psychiatrists are there to help you learn how to help yourself. It's not a weakness to find someone who can assist you in figuring out coping skills, or prescribe you medication to help fine-tune your brain's neurotransmitters. It's just hella expensive.
Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 15. Most people are fricked, or think they are, due to an overload of comparing themselves to others. This has always existed, but because of social media, it follows us. All day, every day. I'm not a psychologist, but this makes the most sense to me. I've never seen so many people feel so lost in my life before. And this only has happened in the last 5 to 6 years as social media sites like Facebook and Instagram blew up in popularity. Tell me I'm wrong, because I seriously think this is one of the biggest reasons. I've always found inspiration in Instagram, especially from art. People that are drawing on camera and creating some amazing stuff. Personally, I've never felt threatened by that, and it wants me to start drawing stuff on my own. I don't know how many other people feel inadequate in their skills when they watch these other people do it. It's kind of depressing in that respect. Story 16. Is talking to yourself normal? And if so, to what extent? I talk to myself a lot, about everything and anything. I'm an only child and didn't grow up with friends. Didn't have any till 5th grade, so I just got kind of used to it. This is a common self-soothing technique and is normal for many people. Not a psychologist, but mostly, if it's affecting your life or ability to function, you may still want to seek help. Otherwise, you're okay. Story 17. Yeah, please help me understand myself. I tend to change my preference and philosophy almost every day. Is something wrong with that? I don't believe there's an underlying mental illness for that. It just means that you're unsure about yourself and aren't able to form an opinion all by yourself. Especially if you're young, your preferences and philosophy is affected by loads of influences that either validate or oppose them. That's perfectly normal. I also experienced that, and I'm pretty sure we're not alone on that. Story 18. Coping with stress in your relationship by walking away from conversations, saying you've had enough, or going silent. Coping with feelings of insecurity and anxiety by lashing out at your partner. Example, asking a bunch of questions about one of their acquaintances instead of saying, I feel insecure for these reasons. Please talk through it with me. Been a couples therapist for 10 years. Now clinical director of a private practice. So many more, but those are 2 of the most prevalent in couples work. Story 19. From the patient's side, it took having a massive anxiety attack at my doc's office to find out that, no, massive anxiety attacks in front of strangers isn't common or normal. Yeah, I'm struggling with that in college right now. Ironically, in my stress management class, because we talk about things kind of abstractly and emotionally, and that's just not something that I can do in front of people for some reason. Story 20. Research psychologists checking in. If your toddler is doing socially unusual behaviors such as not responding to name, not responding to a social smile, not pointing or using gestures, using your hands or arms as if they were a tool or extension of their body, engaging in repetitive behaviors, not responding to your use of gaze to direct their attention to distal objects, check with the pediatrician about getting assessed for autism spectrum disorder. Story 21. Rage and anger outbursts. I'm shocked by how much bad behavior during an adult tantrum is written off with little or no reason. Oh, that's just how he gets when he's mad. He'll calm down. No. Adults should be able to regulate their anger and handle it appropriately. Everyone gets angry. That's totally normal. But we shouldn't find ourselves escalating so easily and responding in ways we later regret. Story 22. I'm pretty sure having feelings that change from ecstatic to near self-unaliving over the course of mere hours almost every day is pretty bad. Thought my dad was bipolar for ages because literally anything negative in his eyes could tip him over into an extreme tantrum/upset and ruin his mood like a switch, until someone on YouTube listed out the symptoms of depression. Turns out he has textbook depression. Story 23. Speaking as a patient here, this may seem obvious to some, but if you genuinely think you or others would be better off with you dead, seek help. That's something to take seriously. If you find yourself making plans or fantasizing about it, even more so. I was shocked to realize later on that my repeated self-unaliving ideation never tipped me off that something was seriously wrong. Story 24. I'd like to point out that there are tons of things that are normal but are not healthy or ideal. Normal is just what the statistical majority are doing, not what would be best for them. I think the main question should be, what impact is it having on my life and relationships, rather than wondering how it compares to the average person's experience or behaviors. Story 25. Being bullied. Amazing the number of people who are afraid to come to work in the morning because of the actions of their coworkers, and if the salary is good, they put up with it for years. I was the mentor for a department of 20 or so staff, all women. They tortured one poor lassie. It affected her health, intimate life, everything. Story 26. Therapist here. If you grew up with or currently are a part of a family where the whole family has to work to keep one or more members of the family in a good mood or appeased, that's not healthy. People are in charge of their own feelings. It is not your job to appease others so that they can emotionally regulate themselves. Story 27. Exhaustion. If you're too tired to get out of bed, or if you literally can't function during the day, even though you may not be consciously aware you're having emotional difficulties yet, your body is shutting you down and making you pay attention to it. The same goes for aches, pains, recurring flus, etc. Get it checked. Story 28. Getting stressed every day. You'd be surprised how many people just say, "No, it's okay, my job is just stressful," or other similar excuses. So many health issues arise from stress or prolonged unmotivation, not wanting to do things. Having both at the same time is fun, let me tell you. Story 29. The biggest thing I've run into over and over again is people normalizing their negative or injurious behaviors. I've seen multiple clients go through what I'd call bargaining and say it's only jokes or just this one time, but they're in dire need of assistance before they take those next steps. Story 30. The attitude of their parents. No, really. There are a lot of bad things that current parents do that are just seen as normal when they're not, and they have long-lasting psychological effects from emotional damage. I'm still realizing how abusive my parents actually were years after moving out. Story 31. Self-sabotaging behavior can ruin your life quickly. If you have an event in your life that has affected you negatively, and you seem to find yourself exhibiting irrational or incongruent behaviors, see a counselor. You don't have to have any certain pathology to seek mental wellness counseling. Story 32. Not a psychologist, therapist, or counselor, but this is something I wish people paid more attention to. Going from straight A's to C's and D's. Speaking of grades, having good grades everywhere except one or two subjects, especially if those subjects are English or math. Story 33. Shadow people. One question we asked was if they ever saw, heard, or smelled anything others didn't. This came up more often than you might think. What the hell is a shadow person? That's one of the scariest combinations of two words I can imagine. Story 34. Dismissing your own feelings, your own thoughts, and your own internal voice saying something isn't right because others around the world have it worse. Devaluing your thoughts and emotions is a quick path down to making them louder and more painful. Story 35. Thinking that 5 hours of sleep per night is okay. Rapid weight gain or loss with no obvious medical cause? Relationship problems? Don't get me freaking started. Frick, if I go to sleep right now, I'll get 5 hours. Story 36. I had a client tell me he had a normal amount of panic attacks a day. 15. I got him to describe them. They were full-on panic attacks and had to explain that was not normal. Story 37. Disassociating with friends. Current friend of mine is having real struggles emotionally and mentally. We're still talking, but he's been distancing himself from other people. We reach breakthroughs every now and then, but it's been difficult. Story 38. People normalize abusive behaviors by loved ones all the time. Being able to identify your own personal boundaries and then enforce them with others for your own well-being is unfortunately not innate. Story 39. I had one who preferred to self-stimulate rather than have intimacy with his wife. Said that people-to-people contact spreads diseases. That was a roller coaster of a couple therapy session. Story 40. Emotional regulation. I see typical kids that just can't handle anything. It's terrifying. They're going to have a very difficult journey ahead unless they seek help. Story 41. Being a butthole to everyone. It's something that's become a norm due to their anonymity on internet and carries out in real life. Story 42. Paranoia. Even if you're not having auditory or visual hallucinations, paranoia can be the gateway to worse underlying issues. Story 43. Inability to regulate your own emotions. Also, negative self-talk. We talk to ourselves way worse than any person could.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.